So you only went to one place and wait, so just say that again.
Yeah, I'll kind of start from the beginning. It's like I probably am going to be the person now that's ringing the alarm bell on housing and how imbalanced the market's going to be for people that make below a certain amount of money. I am not assuming that my friends don't make a lot of money, but what I'm seeing is what used to be regular money does not buy you a house anymore. What used to be you're doing good does not buy you a house anymore. So I myself, if I don't have this grant, then I'm below minimum wage. Like I don't get guaranteed money. It's like the job might pay $100, might pay $500. The job might pay whatever, doing like photos or art or whatever. Uh, Average cost of housing in the United States now is over $400,000. The average income is still under $70,000. In order to purchase a $400,000 house, you either have to have upfront cash or to get the mortgages or to pass the credit checks, you have to make over $100,000 to $120,000. It's like $100,000 with no other debts. But if you have college loans or a car note or something like that, then you got to be clearing like $100,000. And
Question. How
yeah,
long do you have to have made $100,000?
now you're getting into those good questions, not just 6 months, right? Normally, from our experience in filing, it's they want 2 years of tax returns. So there's at least needs to be some consistency. And it may, depending on how large of a loan or how how much you're already over leveraged with debt, then those numbers change, right? They still want a cosigner, or they may still want like a guarantor or something like that. Um, and so part of why I'm bringing that up is I'm in Fort Lauderdale now. Fort Lauderdale is growing so fast, and Southern Florida is growing so fast that in a safe neighborhood, but like not good, like not like fancy, not da da da, not big, one floor apartment with your neighbor right next to you, no yard, nothing fixed up, the management not trying to fix anything. It's still like 900 a room, almost $1,000 a room. To stay in the nicer apartments, it's up to 12, 1,500 a room. You in going to like Portland, Maine, it used to be you can get a house for 1,800, 2,000 that might have 3 bedrooms or something like that. That same area, nah, like rent a house. The same area, it's now up to 1,100 a month per person or something like that. And when you think about what's the market in Portland, like how do you make money there? Like if you're a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or whatever, you work for an institution, I guess then maybe the wages have gone up. But if you work in retail or you work in nightlife or you work in other non-traditional means, it's looking like the deck is being stacked towards us being left in the renter category. And historically, that doesn't tend to work so well for people long term, like in the sense of if whole communities are kind of not able to own land. So there are two things that it made me think of is finding the places where it's still affordable and where it's metropolitan enough so that if you have to be there to work on the house or if you have to be there to take care of the property or you have to be around because something goes wrong, it won't drive you crazy. But where if you don't want to be there, it's not a town that's dying, it's not a city that's dying, and that basically you can resell your property in however long and not have to deal with like managing tenants. I'm not sure that like for people that want a free life, being a landlord is actually what they'd be looking for. If it is, well, then finding a place that's growing, figuring out how to buy a house as soon as possible and get people into it, make more money, and then buy another property. And after that point, if you don't like managing houses, sell the first one. You have cash. You can buy something that you would want to live in. You've built, to Amy, to your point, Gravity. If you've done that, then you've built a history of managing loans or paying loans back. And so even if you don't have a high salary, your bank or the entity that you've been able to get funding for your other two smaller properties will have a more trusting relationship with you if you've maintained your obligations or responsibilities with them. But me personally, there's no way I can jump into a $400,000 house. Like no matter what me and Melissa do right now, if we apply for that type of loan, we're not going to get it. Like I don't have a steady income and she left the DOE. Even though she worked for 20 years straight and has a history of I pay my bills on time, we cannot get a loan for a house like that. And instead of giving up, it's the idea of how to buy other properties that are smaller, and whether they're $80,000 properties, so you can come to the table with 10,000, 15,000, get a loan on that. You manage it properly. 2 or 3 years later, you sell it. You may not make a lot of money, but you probably then have created relationships with contractors, plumbers, electricians, yakety yak, whatever. Figure out your taste of if you want to be more in conservation, if you want to be more in agriculture, if you just want a bed and breakfast, if you want to, you don't want to do nothing with it, but just let it be, whatever it is that you find to align with your spirit, and then can start using that first property as leverage to either free up capital to put in on other stuff after saving, or to pull equity out of it. If you have a reasonable enough property and you're able to, let's say you get a $50,000 property and you come to table at 20,000, and in somehow 3 years you pay off the other 30, you are allowed to borrow money from banks using the house equity. Now, the danger is you don't pay the money back. Now your land can be taken. But on the other hand, that now gives you 30, 40,000. That's a down payment on a property that might be 200,000 instead of just 50, or 150,000 instead of just 50. Do that for another 2 or 3 years. And now if you've managed that properly, you can pay back that first 30,000. You still have equity in that first one, or you pay part of the first one, part of the second one. And before you even finish paying off the second one, you're allowed to take equity out. I believe after 3 years of paying on time, you're allowed to take equity out. It's not a reverse mortgage. And it's what you don't want to do is do like a double mortgage, or I shouldn't say what you do or don't want to do. I'm not offering financial advice, but I'd be careful with reverse mortgages or double mortgages. But you are able to extract money based on equity in your property, and the bank will be able to tell you what percentage of equity you have access to. But it's real. Like any place that was cheap, like Fort Lauderdale 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it wasn't bad out here, but the pandemic has turned this place upside down. Miami, you like over near Wynwood, the amount, the high rises that are going up and the cost, it's untenable. And the cost of food in these areas as well. And so outside of the learning the math or the actual paperwork on the housing, I would start researching where you feel comfortable being, like what's close to what you need. Like if it's family, if it's nature, if it's, a certain type of job, and start really doing the math on, if you want to be in New York City, it might be like, it's worth being in an apartment, or if buying land is important just to go visit, then it might be a thing of keeping it close enough to New York City. But if it's kind of long-term, I need someplace to grow old and where they can't take it from me type of deal, I think that's going to take some heavy research now. Because property taxes, like out in Westchester, a friend of mine, they bought their property for they bought the land for $30,000 back in the 70s, built their own house, probably spent, $100,000 on that. The house is now worth over $800,000. They are about to retire and their property taxes are over $25,000. Now, a year. So even though they own their own house, they're going to be on fixed income. If they can't come up with $25K a year, they're going to lose their house, or their kids have to pay for it. Now, what allows the property tax to go up that high is the municipality. They're like up where we are, on a same valued house, the property taxes might be 1/3. But like the empty properties we have, like the 15 acres, $800 a year property taxes. You put $1 million house on it. If that's in one county, that might be $40,000 a year taxes. Another county, it might be just 15. And so like gauging where the municipality looks at sustainability is kind of what I'm emphasizing. And I hadn't fully thought out what I was saying when I started. I just knew the feeling of it. But gauging if the actual town or county or municipality gives a fuck, sorry about the language, about people being able to stay there for 30, 40, 50 years. Because a lot of places are like, we don't care. We need new people. We need vibrancy. We'll let the developers come in. will let people come build vacation homes, Airbnb, turn the market upside down, and we need to quick money. And then hopefully that gives us enough to then build with. But municipalities are chasing money right now.
You're breaking up again real quick. Wait a second.
Okay.
Can you say that again? What, like, I don't know.
When did you stop hearing me?
When you said whether the municipality really care about the people living there for 30 years.
Okay, then maybe it'll help if I shut the video. And so there are places where they don't want developers to come in. There's a town plan, and you can look it up normally online, or if you contact the town office, like the clerk or the I'm used to dealing with towns. Like cities, there may be 3 different offices, but in towns there's usually one, like the courthouse or the municipal building, where you can get almost all the information, and you can get a copy of the town plan. In the town plan, it will say their goals for development. And so there are towns where they literally will say, if our population is 1,200 people now, we don't want it to exceed 1,300 people in the next 10 years. So we will only allow this many residential buildings to be built. We will only allow our highways or our roads to be expanded or not. And what certain municipalities realize is, if you keep the roads small enough, none of the larger big chain stores can get equipment to you. So then you don't have to worry about Home Depot or Walmart or whatever. So if you find an area that says no 4-lane highways, very unlikely then they're going to bring in a major developer. Does that make sense?
Broke
Yeah.
up again. Yeah.
Yeah, because they usually make they all have a 10-year outlook
Yeah.
in every area. So yeah, that pretty much tells us exactly what and that's a good way to know exactly, who's going to be building what. And just like when they did with Philly, when they changed certain laws and when they changed certain zoning,
Yep.
which allowed different, taller buildings to be built versus just the 2 stories to now 4 stories. Like in Jamaica, Queens, they changed that. So yeah,
And
okay.
you can get some of that stuff, like with building code changes. Some of that is going to be kind of following local community news. With the town plans, they also will show restrictions, and will let, like, potential investors or people interested in the area what kind of things they want it to be known for. So if you go to certain counties and you're like, we want to do a major outdoor concert once every year, it should generate $500,000 for the community. It'll, require A, B, or C. We need to get the police involved. There's some counties that are like, thank you. We've been waiting for you to do this. We'll do all the stuff on our side, that you have a big open field. We'll get the porta potties. We'll talk with the police, fire people, yada, yada. Make sure we make money. And there are other places where they're like, we don't care how much money you bring in. That's going to disrupt our whole community. We don't want the cars, the traffic, the noise, the drunk people, nothing. And we'll arrest people. We'll set up roadblocks if you try to do it. And you can get some of that info from like viewing a town plan to see how receptive they are to things such as tourism or kind of summer vacation rental, second home location, as opposed to places that make it very difficult to own a summer home,
Yeah.
Now, I I've been so kind of overwhelmed in looking at the pricing of everything and like trying to figure out where in the country it's not happening. Did y'all have any like kind of specific questions, or like were there interests you all had that we didn't cover last week or in the first session? And since it's just 3 of us, where we could be like pretty direct.
Well, we more were thinking, first we have to really figure out. I know what we want to do first is have a place where we can live and also possibly make money. Like that would be the first thing for us. So we have to figure out like what area, where do we want to go?
Yeah.
And as far as where do we want to go as it relates to what type of what are we going to be doing on the property? So if we want a building, are we going to do a new development? Do we want open land, put a trailer, things like that? So we first have to figure out exactly, it's not gonna probably happen in New York, right, Gravity?
I don't know. I think my thing is like I just don't everything just I don't know how to get anywhere.
So yeah, so her concern is, which this is everywhere is not New York City. So we will not have mass transit. And it is what it is. We're just gonna have to get a vehicle and have a vehicle to get around. Ideally, we probably would want to be able to come back and forth to New York, so that, to keep some sort of ties. How that works out or how we do that, not sure, but ideally I know Gravity will want that. But wherever we move, I mean, we will want to be with some sort of a mass transit, but it's more expensive in the city. It does get inexpensive, further out or in the rural areas. Um, yeah. She just has to be, convinced to be prepared to have to drive.
It's not that. I don't know. I guess like I or while I don't know what I'm well, I don't know what I'd be doing for work. Get
Well,
Well,
quick
remote
question,
shit.
right?
What?
Uh, quick question. Is there a way to lessen how many variables are going into the equation? Like right now, and I'm probably, I'm jumping out there, but it to me sounds overwhelming trying to figure out all that at once, right?
Yeah.
And oh,
well, it definitely, if she knew what she was going to do as far as work, we probably would select a place faster.
well, so something to look at is those other considerations, right? Gravity, your folks are in a certain area, and if you want to be able to get back to them within a certain amount of time, you can
Yeah.
start drawing a map of what places get me there within a certain amount of time. And whether it's by plane and you do your map off of like everything needs to be a 3 hour flight or whatever, or everything needs to be a 6 hour drive or whatever it is. And you start making little bubbles of, at least this is what I did on the map of that, and it starts getting you in a frame of like, well, I can't go further than here. And if you once you start looking at flights, or like if you're going to do it based on how far a flight is it, you'll also start seeing which states are hella expensive to fly to and from, and are actually you need 3 planes to get 2 states over, and there are other states where you can go almost 6 hours off of a straight flight. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then as your life kind of starts unfolding, the things such as work or in what is you're really drawn to doing with the property, but you can start taking on the manageable elements or the things that you do know about, so that at least for me it doesn't become overwhelming, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I didn't know if I wanted to like go on it with somebody else. I don't know. I'm slowly like getting into the idea and just figuring it out. But like, I mean, ultimately, we would want to have that and a place here.
And like an apartment or a building in New York City.
At least an apartment.
Yeah, yeah. I would advise, like, I think for most of the people I'm around, the isolation and the homogeneity and like everything being the same in the areas that are financially accessible to us at this moment, or at least to me and Melissa, it's hard. Like if I had to just be in any of these areas where you could buy a house for 150 or $200,000, even the ones that are diverse, like if you go down south, you can go to parts of Mississippi or Alabama, and you'll find Black neighborhoods where you're in a cool neighborhood, the houses are 200, 300,000. But you're also in an area that gets hurricanes, or you're in an area that gets flooded every year because you're in the
Yeah,
Mississippi.
that's my other concern is natural disasters are getting worse. And where is a good like what is least hit by natural disasters, but wouldn't that be the most expensive?
Well, you are in luck that the Northeast has very few natural disasters, as well as New York State has some of the average costs per acre for land. The issue with like Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, the states are so small that any open land has already been occupied, not all already been occupied, but there isn't a whole lot of available land. But in Western Massachusetts, definitely up in Maine, New York State. New York State's the largest state on the East Coast until you hit Georgia. So
What did you say about New York, Moon Pie?
What do you mean? About staying in New York?
Yeah.
The
Say,
to have a place. Say,
why did you say done in New York or something?
oh, oh, tiny houses.
Oh,
so
I didn't say that. You're talking about from before when we were talking on
yeah,
off the call?
yeah.
Right. Yeah, certain things we couldn't do in New York City.
so
In New York.
what you
Mm-hmm.
can do with the tiny houses, because we talked about that last week, is there if you are able to figure out the mobile system, or if you're able to work with a municipality that is understanding why you're doing your setup. So if you're doing like um if you have a special program or in some way it makes sense that these type of dwellings are being implemented, you can get things kind of signed off, but New York doesn't like it. But I believe Massachusetts, so if you go like maybe an hour east of, I don't know, like if you go up north like 1 or 2 hours and then go, yeah, 2 to 3 hours and then go east a little bit, you end up in parts of Western Massachusetts where I believe you are allowed to do tiny houses, and you're the same distance away, if not closer, than if you were to be out near us in Otsego County. Um, the Berkshires
You woke
have,
up again. He's something about what? So start about the Massachusetts. I didn't hear it after that.
can you hear me now?
What about Massachusetts? Yeah, well, what is it in Massachusetts again? That-
Western Massachusetts, like the Berkshires have a long history, so a lot of the property there is expensive. But if you look at the land that borders New York State and Massachusetts, that's just as close as if you were out where we are in Otsego County.
Yeah,
And and you may be able to do the tiny houses because Massachusetts is a Commonwealth and they have different property laws. I'm not like so familiar with their laws though.
okay.
Mm. And thinking about as the world's changing, it looks like a lot of agriculture is going to move to the Northeast and places like New York State that have a lot of open rural, like former farmland and dairy land that now as the climate's changing, you can start to grow things that you weren't able to grow 60 years ago. And with the natural disasters, the flooding, the droughts, the fires that are in California, Texas, and now like some of the weather issues in Florida, it's possible that certain parts of the Northeast will be feeding the majority of America. Um, and so looking at places like Maine,
Will be what? Wait, certain parts of the Northeast will be what?
feeding America.
Yeah.
Or we'll continue to just buy stuff from overseas. Like that also could happen.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I think also as you pin down one of them, so as you start figuring out your distance away from family or how much that matters to you, then when you're talking to people, they'll hear that and they'll be able to start bringing in answers to the other things in terms of like, oh, well, you're looking at West Virginia. There's this town there where this happens. Or like, oh, you're looking in up in Massachusetts. You know, there's this group of people that started A, B, or C out there. And I think once you can pin down even a portion of what you want, or like how when I talked to Tori, she's like, if we get property, we need a place where if we want, we can all grow old together.
Yeah.
And so thinking about what you'll need 40, 50 years from now, theoretically, like I'm in the older port. Oh, you all are close to my age, actually. So that could be a 30-year plan. If we're talking about retirement for some of us who are under 40, not us, but some of y'all under 40, you might be talking about a 30-year plan. And so you got plenty of time in a certain way. And there'll be plenty of opportunities. And so if you kind of keep in mind the things you do know, stay not inflexible, but kind of committed to that, you know, in the next 6 months, something may help decide the distance part. In another 6 months, it might help decide, you know what, I've learned more about A, B, or C. I know I don't want to do these 17 things. And in another however many years, you may have a 20-year plan that would work for you. But I don't think that comes in a short, like for a big plan like that. I don't think that just happens overnight. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
What's up, Rob? How you feeling?
What's good? Greetings to everyone in the chat. I'm feeling good. Excited to see what's going on.
Uh, I was telling everyone at the beginning that I'm getting freaked out and I'm about to be the alarm bell guy that's like, yo, the housing market is not going to get better. And when it does, it's only going to be good for people that already have money or good credit. And so figuring out how to get in with not good credit, with not a lot of money and soon is a challenge. But I'm down here in a part of Florida that's nice. Like it's quiet out here. It's a nice little neighborhood. But these one floor houses on less than half an acre are still going for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a smaller house than the one we have upstate. It's on 1/20th the space and is more expensive. And you're not in Miami. I'm not in Fort Lauderdale. I'm outside of the actual city or downtown area, and it's still expensive. Places I went to 10 years ago, like Tallahassee, like places that literally you could rent a whole house for $800 or $1,200. It's starting to get regular prices. And it don't make sense because it's still Tallahassee. I don't know if you've ever been down there. It's dope. But outside of Florida State, the state capital, and FAMU, there isn't a whole lot popping for it to be costing $300,000 for a house. And I don't have an answer, but I think with enough thought and preparation, we can make plans for ourselves if it's what we want to do, you know? Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny you say that because that link I showed you, like things like that where you could rent to own or where, people financing just differently. Because I like I was telling everybody, we're all looking for opportunities to get pieces of land, and it's important that maybe we try to find a little small collective. Because even right now, I found something that's a half an acre, an hour and a half away from the city. It's 3 lots, and that could be a nice little entry point for people who want to experiment, work together as a collective.
yeah, and I think that's something for people to think about is what their tolerance or excitement is for the reality of collective ownership, right? Like this
You
isn't,
breaking up, Chris. You breaking up.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Something to think about is your tolerance or excitement for collaborative work and the reality of, have you ever co-owned a $500 item with someone and they get to use it when you're not there? Imagine that times 10. And then when, like, if everyone spent all their savings to do it, how do people act? Something to consider is, in what relationship do people engage in these partnerships? Are they true partnerships where all three parties have all equal responsibilities and equal duties? Who establishes that? Who enforces it? If it doesn't go right, how do you make sure that your friendships, if you're working with friends, aren't ruined by our dreams? And how do we make sure that if we're working with strangers, there isn't that we take advantage of each other because we don't know each other kind of element to it? And I'm not going to dissuade people from collective ownership, but I will say, if right, like Melissa and I both have to sign paperwork to do certain things with the property we own, we were advised by just about every attorney, if you all aren't married, at least start an LLC so that if y'all end up not being able to speak to each other, there's a method by which you can dissolve your assets that's already been established prior to the fight. If you do it as regular individuals, no LLC, no marriage, no contract that establishes how you separate from a partnership, you run into issues that are very hard to not cause conflict amongst friends. or strangers. And so kind of consider, if you're going to do collective work, which format do you want to use? Will it be a true collective, cooperative commune? Will it be a LLC? Will it be a marriage, or like another form of contract that establishes relationship? Because if someone dies, their property goes to their kids or goes to their spouse, or if someone gets married, that partner now, sometimes if you're not a LLC, if it's just whatever, they now have ownership rights to the other asset. Y'all hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, let me check the chat. Oh, bet. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I understand.
And so when we talked to lawyers, I was like, yo, me and 5 friends want to buy property and da da da. And they were like, you're gonna start a business. And I was like, no, we don't want to make money. We want to like have land and like make sure we have a place to go if everything goes to hell. And every single lawyer was like, you sound crazy as hell, bro. Do not do that. You and your partner want to buy property. Okay. You all aren't married, don't like it, at least start a LLC. And when you get above 2 people, it's definite. Like start a something. And it'll make you identify who has what responsibilities. It puts it in paper. It makes it so that like you and your friends don't have to have that weird conversation of, so what happens if you don't do your part? And then the other person's like, well, I'm offended. You think I won't do my, it's like, no, the lawyer will sit there and tell everyone, here's what you have to answer. And it helps you kind of identify some of that stuff up front, or where you might have disagreements up front, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I don't see how anything major happens without collective ownership. Every real estate or symposium, workshop, in person or digital thing I've taken, participated in, the people that make money use syndication. And syndication is a finance word for group ownership, and where 2 or 3 people have money, 2 or 3 people have credit, 2 or 3 people have experience, and the 6 of them make money together, buying multiple properties together. But they do it like it's, the syndication is a legal dynamic. Like it's you have to be a registered invested a accredited investor to come in with just money and not any actual activity. You have to be registered as a B, or C if you're going to then be the project manager or the person that's actually executor of activities. And all that gets established by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Houses aren't necessarily considered a security, but are, because of they can be investment financial tools. Now we're getting into areas where I am not a special. I'm not a specialist in any of this, but now we're getting an area where I'm the opposite of a specialist. And so look into syndication, SEC, and how houses or property can function as a security. And if you want to keep it simple, there are communes. There are people who back in the 50s, 60s started communes. There's legal precedent for it. There are people in the 20s, 30s who started communes. There are people in the 1800s who started communes. So there are methods by which you can legally own property with other people. You just have to find the lawyers who understand it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
So yeah, any other kind of general questions or stuff that you'd had on your mind?
I
No?
don't right now.
No, I mean, what was the basis of these meetings?
In general, it was to update people on what we were doing, Black land ownership, and to start building I think to force action is that I'm gonna have the meeting hello? Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, I'm
Hello.
gonna have a meeting every week. It'll force me to take action and start organizing my thoughts of what could be helpful to other people. I think last week you all brought up things that caused me to research. This week, since I'm traveling, I think I was just so focused on the like, yo, I'm not seeing a part of the country that's getting cheaper. And so something that people can do is we start putting together a spreadsheet of areas of the country, whether it's geographic or regional, and whether it's like the Northeast whether it's Southwest, and look at what it provides for us in the sense of out in the Southwest, land is a lot cheaper. You want to go to Arizona, Nevada, places like that, you can get acreage. You can get 20 acres for $15,000. But I can't do anything with any of that property. I don't have the resources. I don't have the knowledge base. I can't grow anything out there. It's a desert. Someone else could figure that out. When we're looking at the parts of the Northeast, upstate is still inexpensive enough that for certain endeavors, that's the spot. But for other things, West Virginia's popping, Indiana's popping. If you're looking at like buying a small house to rent out to college kids, Champaign, Illinois, Peoria, Illinois, where the University of Illinois, Champaign or Peoria is, you can buy a house for $40,000 and rent it out to a college kid at $800 a month. In 1 year, you know, that's 10,000. You make the money back on the house in 3 to 4 years. And that can work for some people. Me, I'm learning I probably don't want to be a landlord, you know. But there are all these options. So I think us starting to
How
be,
much did you say a house like that could be?
you can find houses. I can send y'all stuff. I've found towns and small cities where houses are 40, 50,000, and they're not amazing houses. Again, it's in some of the parts of the country, you'll get 1 floor, 800 square foot houses. Like they're smaller than apartments in New York, but they
Right. But you can rent it out. Like this is just for renting.
yeah. If in Indiana, there are at least 3 towns that like Fort Wayne is growing heavy. Sweetwater, which is a music company, it's the largest distributor of music equipment in the US, and second in the world to a German company. They have no competition. And they set up their factory and their base and right out around like Fort Wayne. And so that place is growing. Even places like not Gary, but there's another
I
time. Huh? What'd you say?
I thought you were saying hello. Sorry. I thought you were seeing if we could hear you.
No. So even like Gary, Indiana. So where I've found the Syracuse, New York, you can also find houses for 60, 80,000. They'll need a little bit of work, but it's a college town. As long as the university continues and they have a hospital center and a medical center relatively close to downtown, but the city's not growing. And so that's a place where the money looks right. If you don't have a whole bunch of bread and you and your friends can put together $10,000, you can put a down payment on a $80,000 house, and you're coming to it with 1/8 of the money up front. So if at 10,000, so if you need 1/5 of 80, so you're looking at like 15,000 or whatever, 15, 17,000. My math is bad, but whatever, you get the point. 3 people can do that. You know, that's 6,000 a person. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's easy, but people can do that. And it's a college town. It gets you into working with banks. And if you then want to go into rural areas, the counties outside of Syracuse are more open and like wilder than where we are. And you get more space once you get into that county. So there are options like that. If you're looking at the Gulf Coast down in Shreveport, Louisiana, inexpensive houses. Mobile, Alabama, inexpensive houses.
But the
And
weather there, what's the like? How's on?
hurricanes, slurricane, floods once every, 15 years, major floods down there. Like Hurricane Katrina is more like once every 50 years, once every 70 years. But that area gets slammed pretty heavily. And do consider the areas that are inexpensive are for a reason. And if they're full of old white people who are poor and Black people, I'd look into the environmental dangers there and the weather problems there, and your ability to get flood insurance, your ability to get fire insurance if you're in California. Um, in DC, Maryland area now, the flooding, like because the sewer systems and the actual like city water systems have like too much. They're above capacity, and so there's certain places where you will have inexpensive housing, but it's such a problem to manage the other issues.
Yeah.
And when you get in the Midwest, you get tornadoes. When you get cyclones. It was negative 20 degrees in Kansas like 3 weeks ago. Kansas is also a state where they're offering, $1 houses, or they'll pay you to move there if you stay for a year and a half or however long. Like some of them are three-year programs, some are 5-year programs. But do you want to be there where it goes down to negative 20 degrees?
No.
Um, and so I think it's things like that. There's some very rural parts of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, where you can get land cheap, but it's a 7-hour drive from an airport that's a 3-plane connector,
Hmm.
to any major city. So it's so I think establishing like okay, what's the part of the country? How far away from the family of the folks? What's my price range? Those things start coming together. The other parts of like what exactly to do with it, probably the cost of the land will help you decide that. Or if you come into it like, I need to be able to do this, then you'll be able to start setting prices in different parts of the country. And over the next year, see what's changing, what's getting better, what's getting worse, and start figuring for you how to research the trends that elucidate what's important to you. Like for some people, it'd be, are a lot of people moving to the area? Are new businesses moving? Have they opened up a new facility or factory, or jobs going there, or are people leaving the town? Like, do you want to go to a place that's actually in a way atrophying? Because you may be able to get things cheaper, you know? But I think, Rob, to answer your question is to start getting people also to drill down on the idea and then start deciding, time frame of, is this a 30-year plan, a 5-year plan, or in 1 year I want to own something?
I feel you. I mean, yeah, that piece I showed you already just started moving forward. I'm thinking, yeah, this is 2 months. I want to see if this is available and just start on this little piece. It's a half an acre. It's an hour and a half away from the city, easily accessible by bus. There's a bus that goes there 3 times a day, a bus that leaves from there 3 times a day. It's a good starting point for anybody that's only lived in the city their whole life.
Are you gonna do something on the land or what?
Yeah, I mean, there's no house, so you would have to build a house, and it's zoned for like either one family or two family. It's 3 residential lots. So even if I was to collaborate with other people, each person could have their own residential lot, stuff like that could be thought of. Or one lot could be used for growing food, one lot could be just used for open space, and then one lot could have tiny homes on it, and each person could have their own tiny home. So, I mean, but first and foremost, we gotta secure the piece, and it's a finance piece of land. Like they're willing to finance it to us. So, yeah.
I mean, did you speak to the town? And one thing to find out is if you have to in any way unify the different parcels, or if they have a minimum parcel size. Like some municipalities will say you need at least a said number of feet, X number of feet of road frontage in order to build on it. And so if you have 3 lots that total a half an acre, if let's say one of them's a quarter acre and the other two are each an eighth acre, you may be in a situation where you can build on all three, or maybe you can only build on the quarter acre lot. And then that helps you designate, all right, the houses can go in this area of the land, the garden or the, forest foraging or the wild, whatever, natural growth stuff here, and then the agriculture here, or the greenhouse or the beehive over there. And so also the land will kind of dictate what you can do with it, like by how it's set up and how much trouble you want to go through either partitioning plots or unifying them.
Yeah, what I was gonna do is like sometime next month, rent a car and go down, check on the land, go to the city, speak to all the things, and really make a decision next month if it's still available, you know?
Yeah, definitely. If you plan to spend time there, go meet the people that are around. If you can meet neighbors, if you see people out and kind of have the mentality or the disposition to feel comfortable to speak to them, you can get a lot of info before uh, you know, put committing to things that will help you in your decision. If you go to the
Yeah.
local gas station, they look at you like, oh, we don't get y'all around here, and it's not the friendly version. Usually that's perceivable, like it's kind of tactile. And me personally, I don't want to fight uphill in rural areas. Like being in the city, I'll kind of like try to work with clubs that don't really like hip hop or, deal with, being in a Polish neighborhood and how people sometimes act and da da da. Out there, we looked at a bunch of places and it wasn't until we got to where we are where people were like, hey, it's good you're here, blah, blah, blah. Tell us about what you're doing. Oh, Black land ownership. That's cool. Like that's necessary. And then it was like, all right, this is a place we can rock with. Other places, it was like, Black land ownership. Why you gotta call it black land ownership? Shouldn't it be land for everybody? And you look around, it's like, dog, it's only white people out here, bro. Like, how are you even mad right now? You know?
Yeah, you're gonna get that.
Um, and being cognizant of your own tolerance. Like, I'm not gonna tell people just deal with ignorance. Like, if you don't have the tolerance for it, I'd be very proactive. And when you go out to the areas, I mean, and depending again, your disposition, you go to the police station, you go to the post office, you go to the actual places you'll have to deal with. Because in these small areas, there's one person and they will have the power to decide whether or not your paperwork goes through. There's no, I go back in 2 days and there's a new person, or I wait till the other person's there to talk to. Nah, it'll be one person. They've had the same job for like 17 years. Like, um, and again, it's to your disposition. If that stuff doesn't matter to you and you kind of like, yo, I'm gonna be in the cut anyway. I'm not dealing with nobody. I'm not gonna stand out. You won't even notice I'm there. That's one thing. But if you're gonna do things that bring people out, or you're gonna do things where you have to get paperwork done and you're doing things special, like we want to do tiny houses in New York State, then I'd make sure you go somewhere where folks are friendly to who you are.
Nah, for real. I mean, everything you're saying is a lot to think about, and yeah, this is why it's so important, just to move forward and do something, because staying in New York City and Brooklyn forever ain't fixing the problem.
Yeah, bro, and finding that balance. And thank you for bringing this up. What's your risk tolerance? That may be a question. I haven't told y'all to write things down. Like this isn't like a class or a lecture or any shit like that. Um, but I would write down a couple of things that came up, and one of them is outside of budget, outside of how close do you need to be to family or friends or work opportunities or whether you want or whatever it is. A big one is what's your risk tolerance and what you can afford to lose, what you can't afford to lose, and then what changes that so that if you're like, well, yo, I really wouldn't want to spend 70,000, but I can if, or it's like, I can only lose 5,000. And if I lose any more than that, I'm gonna be really, really upset. And I'm gonna like make my partner mad. And like, then and knowing kind of upfront where so you can't get pressured. You don't get a real estate agent being like, well, I know you said you wanted a house that's 120K, but I found this thing that's 180, but it has these three things you didn't even say you needed, but it's so amazing. You already know, like, I can't do it. Like, you don't even have to show me, can't. Or you're the type of person that's like, all right, that's the extra 30. I didn't want to do it, but if this is the thing, it's the thing. But where you've thought about it in advance.
Gotcha.
Um, I mean, that was for us when we bought the property in Mississippi. The guy was being really squirrely, and when I saw the listing, I was like, something's wrong. You can't get 10 acres for 3,500. And so immediately I'm like, can you get to the property? He's like, I don't know. I've never been there. So I call the offices. They're like, you definitely can't get there. You can't get to any of the properties around it. I'm like, yep, I'm sure that dude knew that. And then I start asking questions, and he's like, yo, you got a lot of questions. There are other people that want to buy the property, which again, that's not supposed to happen. He's supposed to be like, here's the answer to the questions. If you need, go get a lawyer and blah, blah, blah. He didn't. I was like, fuck it. I need to see how this process works because he was gonna have to file from a different state. Like he lived in Kentucky or something like that. So he had to do the paperwork from his state, get that sent in to the offices in Mississippi, wait for them to send him stuff back. Then they mailed it to us. We then have to fill out stuff to complete the sales transaction. Well, I already sent him $3,500. Like by the time they send me stuff and I find out whether or not he did his section right, I already sent him the money. And if I do mine wrong and file it wrong, we have a problem. But I already sent him the money. And to me, did I have the risk tolerance to lose that 3,500 as a learning experience? And if it worked, we get 10 acres. To me, it was worth the risk. It was worth that adventure. And if I lost it, I would have learned never do that again. Always A, B, or C, and no shortcuts, or whatever it is. And I still kind of feel that way. I probably wouldn't do the same thing again, but I think I needed to do that.
Yeah.
But when I sent him the money, I looked at Melissa. I was like, that's it. I may have just got, and now we back to zero. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so all right, we're about an hour in, and I'm down here in Florida. I've been traveling a bunch, and South Florida's lit, y'all. I'm telling y'all. But so yeah, if y'all don't have any other questions, I think kind of those four major things of like, Rob, sounds like you have stuff worked out, but figuring out your timetable of when you're thinking you want to do something, the timetable of like what the end goal is. So like, when Tori was saying retirement or like place for us to grow old, that's a 20-year plan as opposed to, so what do we got to do in the next 5 years to then be set up in 10 years to then have the 20-year plan come to fruition? Or for you, Rob, where you like, yo, I got a month, and what you can do to move the process along so it'll be smooth for you, you know?
Gotcha.
Uh, But yeah, figuring out your risk tolerance, figuring out proximity to friends, family, activities, whether like where in the country you really are down to be in, figuring out your price range, and thinking about collaboration. Is it something where it's going to be me and one person? Is it a thing of like, nah, we need like 7 people, and how that actually works?
Gotcha. A lot to think about.
It's better than arguing about Taylor Swift, so I'm okay. All right. So I will holler at y'all. I'll be back in town. Melissa and I rented out our apartment, so
Yeah. Saw
I
that.
I planned this trip before we decided to do that. So I really have no idea what my life's gonna be past Saturday. So holler. So I'll holler at y'all. I'll be back though around Saturday. Peace.